So hello there everyone, welcome to your guide or overview of Tretch Craventail of the Skaven. As it is typical in these guides, I played through the initial turns and got a feel for the faction. I'll show you my conclusions and in the end also provide you some army compositions that I would like to try out in my own campaigns. As always, this is not an in-depth guide, just what I do usually before starting up a campaign. Without further, let's go with Tretch Craventail. So for your short victory condition, you need to destroy the Moon Howlers, located in your initial province, basically the first enemy that you need to fight, these greenskins, and the Knights of Caledor, or in essence, Imric. You also need to occupy Loot Razor Sec 30 different settlements. A very short campaign, actually. The biggest difficulty may be yet to fight Imric himself, so be sure to, rush him. It's always easier to rush the initial enemy or the initial main foe, because of course, the AI won't be as prepared or the Lord won't be as leveled up. So yeah, at least the discrepancy between your Lord and his Lord, it's not exactly as large as it can be, and they don't get the time to develop. Now, achieving this will give you +3 recruit rank for all armies. It's very good, always excellent to have better units overall. And with Tretch, it's a bit nicer since there is a couple of bonuses that are related to some units with their XP. Now, for the long victory campaign, you need to achieve the short victory to occupy Loot Razor Sec 75 different settlements, and then to control at least 7 of these settlements. These are basically the starting settlements of most Skavens and some specific ones, such as like Mount Gumbad here. It's rather, it does include Altdorf there, but it's still a rather easy victory condition, I would say. It's pretty straightforward, just ensure that you capture, a steady, that you have a steady control over some settlements. Of course, you need to get to that, to those 75, but at one point, basically, all that you need is, okay, I'm about 5, let me check where the next 2 are and decide, and then you go and conquer, and that's it. Now, achieving this, it does give you +2 global recruitment capacity. Now, this is decent, of course, to ensure that you can always have your armies in full capacity for the domination in endgame. Skaven don't really rely or require that much, but of course it does help if you're if you're losing some units overall in battles and stuff. You always have a global recruitment to ensure that your armies are always at full capacity. Now, Tretch, let's speak about him. He's the Grand Chieftain of the Deep Warrens. Now, Scurry Away, as you can see there below, has an improved effect and actually grants a minor ward save while active. So one of the main mechanics of the Skaven, actually with the Scurry Away mechanic, it's actually much better with Tretch, which is good. Of course, it's always good to have these effects. Even if it's not a mechanic that you believe will happen too much or that you will notice, it's effective. Now, he also provides some buffs to Storm Vermin. In attribute Encourage for Storm Vermin units, it doesn't say there, but of course, actually it does, sorry. It provides a leadership bonus to nearby allies, and this is really cool because the Encourage effect, it's really detrimental for how Skaven play, because they really need that leadership. They have it very low, so yeah, that's a big issue. Now, one of the favorites that I have here is that you gain for 3 turns after declaring war, plus 25% ambush success chance, Vanguard deployment to all units, this is crazy good, Menace Below, +1 use to all armies, that's good, and enemy reinforcement time, plus 50%. So, what does this do, and specifically the ambush success and the Vanguard deployment? You should always, it encourages you to prepare war declarations well in order to benefit from it, and especially what Tretch can do is to win the campaign right on the beginning in 3 turns. It's really cool to use, but I always advise to focus this a lot. If you try to just go on defensive wars with Tretch, it's difficult. Just get a good target for these wars, at least early on, of course, and then when you get a foothold, it's much better. Now, finally, Clan Rats, all Clan Rats and all Storm Vermin get an additional +1 armor and base weapon damage per unit experience rank. So basically +9 to each. +9 armor is not bad, +9 weapon damage. It's not bad at all because, Clan Rats really don't have it. Storm Vermin, of course, will benefit from all of those, so that's cool. It could be a little bit more. I think it could be even +2 without causing too much issues. It would be an interesting choice. But yeah, So it's a nice set of buffs. It goes for a specific playstyle involving some cunning, some treachery. It's perfect. I really like it. Now, climate is really good. I won't even put the typical flags that I used to do, because it's very easy to see that only towards, you know, the Chaos Wastelands, or in some other areas like this or Ulthuan, you're gonna have some troubles. But otherwise, it's really good. You can go anywhere. It's a very good campaign to do domination, or even complete map world domination endgame. So your starting position is quite difficult, as expanding with to any area really will just be met with more enemies. So you have a 3 settlement province, and you do start in the capital, which you'll get some military going, and it's somewhat easier to conquer initially and to hold back, because it's these 3 settlements. It's really easy to have like maybe just an army around to defend all 3. The main issue is that you'll have to contend with some enemy legendary lords right from the start. The newly arrived Chaos Dwarfs here, Imric down here. So yeah, it's tricky. You can even have issues with the Crooked Moon around there. So you have plenty of legendary hero lords around you that can cause trouble, so be careful. Now, typical expansion, I'd say it's to establish a foothold around here. Likely it's going to all the way into the south, okay? And then there's nothing, and then trying to use the mountains as sort of natural borders, and even this river, try to use it as a natural border, while you expand on one side or the other. Now, nothing wrong in going into the north or already into the mountains as well. It's up to you, but be careful of spreading too thin. If you do, you're planning. It's essential. If you spread out too thin, you may have additional wars in one side or the other, and then the campaign may drag on or even be lost just because of a small deficiency in how you expand. So be careful where you go, actually. So diplomacy with the Skaven is rather tricky. You do have the possibility of establishing decent relations with vampire counts, with greenskins and ogres, and that's mainly because of their aversion to you, because it's not really a big penalty, just 10 aversion, it's fine. So that's one of the main ideas here. You should always check who has little aversion to you, and then you plan out on that regard. Now, the problem is that, for the most part, you'll meet the minor factions, so you'll be likely under trouble if they are absorbed and attacked by a major faction. This is especially true for the greenskins, for instance. Now, there's a possibility that they survive with your assistance, and they can become your allies and allow you outposts. So if you do manage some outposts like this, Ogre Monsters Cavalry, as you see there, Greenskins damage-dealing infantry, Vampire Counts Cavalry or Flyers, they're all good possibilities for you. Now, enemies will most likely be order-tied for quite some time. Because you get into an early war for certain against Imric, so the High Elves, and the Dwarfs will definitely target you very soon, especially if you get good relations with this clan of rats here. So, yeah, gaining alliances with anyone that is at war with them is a good choice. And be careful as well with the Chaos Dwarfs. They do have a massive aversion towards you as well, and they will not like you if you have any pacts with Greenskins. So I would consider Tretch to be one of the let's get friends with Greenskins guy as soon as possible, benefit from that. Maybe you can get some early orcs for your front lines in the beginning if you wish, or some orc archers, or even their catapults, that sort of idea, up until you get the big guns, over there. So, in terms of mechanics, Undercities, let's start with that. I do have one established here. They're a very good idea for you to have vision, or to generate food and income, as well as other bonuses for the faction. So, for instance, you can see that I have the Deeper Tunnels, which means the visibility of the region is lost, but this is because I don't want it to be discovered. I'm generating some gold from this settlement, so that's the idea that I want. So, the biggest idea is to suddenly shift this into a Vermintide, but that costs a lot of resources, and it can also backfire. Now, food is a secondary mechanic. Let's say it's your unique currency. It is important to keep finding more, mostly over battles, and some of coming from the Undercities as well, or from commandments, for instance. It's more to avoid penalties than to actually receive buffs. So, as in the penalties, as you can see, they're massive if you're starving for food. But in terms of the the biggest, when there's plentiful food, you can see there. Of course, leadership plus 10 is really nice, and growth is always nice, and control, but it's more to avoid the penalties than to actually receive the buffs. Now, food can also be used for the menace below usage, okay, that army ability that the greenskins have, and also when you capture a settlement, then you can turn it to a higher level settlement, which is really nice. I believe I've done this here, for Fortress. I've spent some food so that I could have, a tier 2 settlement there, which is of course always better. Now, Skaven corruption. Let's talk about that Skaven corruption. Now, this allows you a little bit more control, of course, and the number of uses for menace below that you can get when you're fighting in that province, of course. So that is always something to be to wait for, of course, that you always should be on the lookout for. You do have, if it provides some food in public order when it's low, so public order penalties when they're high, but nothing too really detrimental, as you can see there. Okay, now an additional mechanic of such is kind of how the Skaven actually can attack, and I consider this, I'll speak about this in the army stances, but they have a chance of ambushing any enemy army while attacking. Now this means every battle you initiate has a chance to become an ambush. Some army compositions are just entirely possible because of this, and Tretch has an increased chance after declaring war, which adds to that playstyle. Now, let's check on the rights, shall we? So rights. You have several ones. So the dominating scheme, it gives you food per turn, growth, control, recruitment cost. So all of this is really good for the early game. So by all means, if you manage to do this, it's really nice. And then we have the 13th scheme, which, it's all revolving around the 13th. So more diplomatic relations with Skaven is always nice. More hero action success chance, and enemy hero action success chance dropped. The loyalty is always good. Don't neglect that, because sometimes you have those unloyal. This is a basic mechanic that exists in many factions, but your lords have a loyalty rating. If they get to 0, they rebel, and you can't get rid of them, and they become a faction. So yeah, be careful. And then you have this army ability, which is tremendous. This is one of the key elements, I believe, sometimes to ensure that you can take out Imric if he becomes too powerful, or any factions really like the ogres, for instance, because this army ability, the effect range, of course, you can surround one of those tricky enemies and just give them plus 32 bonuses as large. I mean, any hit that any low spearman will get will become really powerful. So yeah, it's one of the ideas to deal with any, large armies, or armies with the specifically large characters or large units. Now, you also have the Pestilent scheme that gives you a Plague Priest hero capable of spreading a deadly plague. All of that, it's already known to you, basically. And you have the unique Warlock Engineer, so he can either target a foreign settlement to cause an earthquake there, wrecking some buildings and stuff, or you can use it to establish an undercity. And this is how typically you'll start your undercity empire. You have to pay attention how they can, there's a building that allows you to spread out, to get more undercities, which is always nice. So that's one of the ideas with this. You start with one Warlock Engineer here, and then suddenly you have all of those undercities. Of course, it's not the only way, but yeah, it's one of the best ways to get, immediately a good undercity. Now, finally, just remember the specific ideas here behind Tretch, which is always so nice, because this is a sort of mechanic. Declare war, you get some nice buffs, and you wreck the enemy in the early game, early stages of the war. You always want to be the aggressor in this case, so be careful for any defensive wars. Those are nasty with Tretch, because he's really doesn't have too much to defend against that. But yeah, if you're the aggressor, if you're prepared, such as it was here, Imric is no problem, and others are not a problem. Okay, yeah, I guess that's about it for mechanics. So in terms of province edicts, so you have the growth and construction cost reduction here, which is always excellent, especially in the early game. Then you have control and corruption, which helps, of course, if you're having some issues, for instance, in this place here, this settlement here, or province, I might need some control. So maybe it's time to start using this. Now, we also have a recruitment cost and local recruitment capacity. I don't consider this too good, especially because the greenskins, I forgot to mention in the previous video, they also get a +1 local recruitment capacity with each settlement, making their factions, really great to have military in a tier 4 settlement province, because they'll get more recruitment slots there. So benefiting from that extra one, it's maybe not that detrimental. It helps, but it's not as useful as some others. Then we have Skaven corruption and food generated, which is always good, especially if you're having an issue with food. And of course I showed you the growth and construction quests. Now, in terms of the army stances, I already have Tretch here in camp, but let's talk about every single other. So the stalking one. Their basic attack is to ambush. So they ambush while attacking is really great. Just ensure that you always are prepared for an ambush. You may have even armies ready for that. For instance, this army is rather good for it as well. So yeah. You also have the typical ambush, so this is the ambush while waiting, for them. This is good to hide your army so that the AI takes different decisions in where they move, and they may fall into your ambush, or at least they may become closer to, they may stay be closer to you so that they don't run off, and then you can actually, finish them off on the next turn. Then we have raiding, which also provides food. This is really important. I know it's 3, but especially in the early game, by all means keep raiding, because that will help. And especially when you're raiding, of course, they also give you a little bit of money, so that's always good. Do note that you need 50% movement, of course, to start. Then we have the channeling one. I don't use this much because I'd rather be in ambush. So remember that if you select this one, of course you're not ambushing in the while attacking. So be careful with that one. This is really good if you really are investing in magic, which you can by all means. But I kind of prefer the chance to ambush. Typically better than just a couple of wins of magic. And then we have Underway. So of course, Underway, any faction with Underway, it's all about strategy. It's really cool. Just ensure that you're not intercepted, of course, because that's a pain. And the main idea, of course, is to go along different locations. For instance, I used it from here to here precisely to have a sneaky attack on the Fortress of Vorag. So yeah, if you have a plan for it, develop it, of course. And this also helps in trying to force the AI into fighting you, of course, because it's always good. If they have a chance to intercept you, you may fight, which is always nice. So yeah. Now, in essence, this is always these are always good, and of course, as if it wasn't enough, they have the encap, which allows replenishment, access to global recruitment pool, immune to most attrition, which is always good, and it's good whenever a faction actually has this. I honestly always thought that Skaven wouldn't have that, but it's good that they have. They benefit greatly for it, so that they can continue with their conquests even in lower quality terrain. Luckily, they don't have too much of that, but yeah, that's always nice. So, starting with the buildings, it's similar to the greenskins. You have an additional, like I said, recruitment capacity with each settlement in a province. So the best provinces for recruitment are 3 to 4 settlement ones. In this case for Tretch, there are very few with 4 settlements nearby, so it may be difficult for that, but still 3 settlement provinces, really good. Now, for the buildings, let's start actually with the undercities. Let me actually select the undercities here. So you do have a unique one, which is the discoverability, as you have there. Keep that in check, all goes well, because if not, they may find out that you're there, and if they find out that you're there, they can just pay some money and wreck your Under Empire city with no consequences for them. They just lose a little bit of money, so yeah, be careful with that. Now, in terms of the specifics here with Crookback Mountain, you do have an amazing good starting, let's say, unique building. Okay, it gives you income, gives you food, gives you income from trade, tradable resources, faction-wide, less recruitment costs for Storm Vermin, and it gives you the best part, it's the immunity to psychology to any Storm Vermin units. So Storm Vermin with Tretch, they're really good. They're really, really good. You can have quite a good combos with Tretch, which is always nice. Now, for full military, you need 6 buildings, and only one of them can actually be built a minor settlement, which you definitely should, so that you can benefit from that. But be wary of that. You know, they do have good options on the tier 3, you know, including poison wind bombardiers and rattling guns, of course, and all the storm vermin, so it's always nice. Okay, and of course the Blackhawk catapults, really cool. But it's on tier 4, tier 5 that actually get really good. They get the Jezzails, they get the poisoned wind mortars. They also get, you know, the one of the best anti-large artillery there is. The warp lightning cannons, I really love it, and most of their monsters. So yeah, just ensure that you keep always going through with the teching up and getting better buildings and better units. Now, all buildings, they do generate two things: Skaven corruption and income. So don't worry too much in terms of income. You'll always get as long as you're building up more buildings, of course. You always get it. So growth is rather important, more important than actually just getting income, because of course, you know, that's how it works. If you're getting income from every building, by all means, all that you need is to build it. It will benefit itself in a while. Now, it will pay for itself in just a few moments, of course. Now, you still have the infrastructure, which gives you a little bit more income, more growth, casualty replenishment rate, or you can have this one, which also gives you Skaven corruption and income from all buildings, which is always nice. Okay, then you do have this other building with, you know, more income, less recruitment costs, and this, the side effect there you don't notice is the all other types of corruption -3. That's the most important one, because sometimes, of course, you're going to have negative effects for that corruption. By all means, just get that one. So, finally, you do have an income control. Look at that, +13 control. All you need is one of these in any province. It will control everything. And Lord Recruit rank, faction-wide, Hero Recruit rank, and Skaven Corruption Recruit rank. So all good things. One note is all these symbols here, all of these symbols, because many of your technologies are behind buildings. So by all means, you need to develop the specific building to get that technology. Just ensure that you always, that the heroes know that you need that specific building. Coming to the technology tree, it's really cool. One of the best, I really like. It's fairly extensive. Many of the things here are, of course, behind buildings that you need to construct. So be wary of that, so that you can get, you know, the ones that you need. There's plenty of changes to how the Vermintide works. Let me show you here. So yeah, replaces all clan rat units spawned from the Vermintide building with storm vermin. You can imagine how big that is, because you get a lot of clan rats and suddenly they're all storm vermin. This makes Vermintide a really good experience for Tretch. In fact, it's one of the best armies, I will believe, to use lots and lots of Vermintide, because if you can plan out the war against anyone, you can have, you know, all those Vermintides getting together, and you get the bonuses from the early 3 turns into a war, so that's always good. But for the most part, what you get is just basic good, you know, melee attack, charge bonus, so good numbers or good upgrades to your units, so even your low clan rats will become decent ones. They won't win the fight for you, but they will survive long enough for you to do all the damage that you need, you know? So yeah, definitely pay attention to some of the stuff on the technology tree, and yeah, always ensure that you have the necessary buildings to continue there. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say regarding technology. So as always, you have Lord specific skills over here, the melee line over there, the red line or army line, and the blue line or campaign line. Now, Tretch has great campaign buffs, actually, to add to the playstyle. So more ambush, more speed, more movement buff, and he gets some good casualty replenishment right there, regeneration, good buffs over to your army abilities as well, good buffs to clan rats, storm vermin. So yeah, the good thing is that it builds up into his own playstyle. Now, the blue line does not have replenishment. However, most skills actually have that skill in a better way in their specific skills, as you've seen here. So that's where they get actually the replenishment rate. So they do have it, just hidden. For the most part, all other lords also have that. Now, they do have ambush increase over here, which is definitely a good way to play up the faction, as well as upkeep decrease as well here with the quartermaster. But for the most part, I'll just stay in the early ones. I'll get the ambush if I'm playing really into it. Maybe I'll get some looting, etc., just to get extra money. I wouldn't go too much into recruitment cost. Most units are rather cheap, actually, so yeah. Now, in terms of the red line, it allows crazy cool good combinations. Definitely one of the most interesting rosters just based on that. They have quite cheap combinations too, so you can spend skills in just one. For instance, you have good quality infantry here, good quality missiles here, you have good quality infantry here as well, you have good all sorts of monsters over here, then you have all sorts of war machines and including artillery here. So yeah, you can do a lot of crazy cool combinations. Now, in terms of lords and heroes specifically, there's a lot of choice. That's one of the best things about them, because even just with lords you have 4 possibilities, and with heroes you have another 4 possibilities, and all of them are really good and they benefit your army as well, which is always nice. I'll showcase a little bit of it later on. But just to tell you, for instance, in terms of heroes, you do have one that gives training there. You do have a couple of them that give you replenishment troops, like you see there. You know, warlock engineers are always great as well for boosting income as well, even if that's just the effect that you wish. You have also plague priests, and then you still have the packmaster, which also replenishes troops. So yeah, basically all of these heroes, they're really quite effective. So just one of the better factions in terms of how many choices they have, specifically for lords and heroes, and how they affect the army compositions. I'll show you a little bit now. So here we have all the red line skills for the Skaven. So the second line kind of mixes them all up a bit, so be on the lookout to maximize your armies, really. Now, in general, we have specific ones for all weapons teams and all elite infantry, basically. So this helps as well. This really helps in ensuring that, you know, you have good choices, especially in the late game, without spending too many red line skills on the line. Now, and you also have artillery joined by war machines, by doom wheels. So yeah, that's cool. And the monster dedicated one, yeah, really nice. Now, Tretch, he feels dedicated to storm vermin and to ambush flanking attacks. So with those devastating flanker attacks and everything, and specifically the 3 turns after declaring war idea, you know, with Vanguard deployment, always count on that as well. So yeah, this means that some combinations of mass melee with fast moving units, as well as some missile units to immediately debuff the enemy, you know, with the poison there, they're really cool. They should work well. They give you some variety. So nothing's wrong with going, you know, your typical, let's go with some weapon some weapon what is called the weapon teams. There you go. That's the word I was missing. Nothing wrong with you going with the standard, you know, just get some cheap Skaven slaves and clan rats and go all in terms of the weapons teams. But I really like to encourage you guys to do some more variety, especially with Skaven. There's such an underrated good roster, and then you can actually improve them during the campaign, and then they can play into different specific styles. So yeah, you know, in terms of the heroes, by the way, I'm choosing just a placeholder, okay? Just one caster hero, one additional melee hero. That's the idea in general, but of course, by all means, get 4 or 5 heroes, whatever you choose. Get a warlock engineer there instead, you know, whatever. All that I am advising here with these, in any roster, in any recommendation, because there's so many types of combinations, is just get at least 1 melee hero and 1 caster hero in all your combinations, because that provides you a lot of variety. So that's it. That's all I'm recommending there. So you also get a good change from other factions that I love, is how the different lords get different buffs and are built into different types of of armies. So for instance, here is an army that is just solely based on getting your lords into the front line, really, and your heroes into the front line. So that's 6 units there in the front lines. These guys are there because of their ability to stop enemies, you know, in their tracks, and then you just kill them outright. A typical, very typical Skaven Doom stack, if you wish. You can get just Jezzails and Rattling Guns, it's fine. I just like to have some more variety, as you see. But nothing wrong with going with some Storm Vermin, especially under Tretch, and having those similar ideas with artillery, with Skaven weapons teams. It's up to you, of course. Then you do have the ability of going into more of a conceal idea. I also like this one, especially with Tretch, because he's good at ambushes. So yeah, that's the sort of idea. You can always get, you know, a good combination of units that are all concealed. You know, all of this army here, they have a stalk, they have abilities to hide. So you can imagine getting into a battle and you see nothing, and suddenly you start getting attacks, and you're already being flanked and doom is happening. So yeah, that's always good. And finally, a couple of compositions around the Grey Seers as well, some Plague Monks, some monsters over here. This is just to showcase how much variety you can have, and notice that it's always very cheap in terms of red line skills. So yeah, some monster line with weapons teams always works really well. It's always cool. You can have a more mobility based army here with just some fire support against towards them. This always works well into an ambush stance idea. But yeah, that's the fun part with Skaven. I can show you 20 more combinations if we had the time, but yeah, that's the incentive that I want you to find an idea and just go with it and try it out, because Skaven has so much fun with it. So, in conclusion, Tretch is actually quite an interesting position. He's in the middle of things. If you succeed in the early game and establish a foothold, if you get over the initial enemies, if you gain, you know, some territories like I gained here via Confederation, then Tretch really can shine as the backstabber, the ultimate backstabber. He'll declare war, he'll beat you in 3 turns, that's the idea. Win decisively in those few turns to get the edge that you need, and that's it. You can still be quite varied, as you've seen with Tretch, but Storm Vermin are definitely something to go for in your armies. Now, just because of the buffs, nothing wrong with the typical range focus, but Tretch does feel quite ambush focused. I compare him with Kazrak, the One Eye of the Beastmen, where, you know, most of his playstyle, specifically for the Lord, should be focused on around those ambushes. Now, for the army, you'll always have a good infantry, a great missile infantry and artillery, especially those weapons teams. Good monstrous infantry and single entities, great heroes and varied. I cannot stress this enough, they're so good. I cannot showcase them all. I'll have a video about the army roster and then I'll talk about it. No flying units, that's a pain. That's where I would advise the outposts. And no real cavalry. So, replenishment is great, especially considering the climate. You know, they don't have a lot of issues with the climate as well. So that's a really cool thing. You most likely recover your army in time to continue conquering. You also have decent recruitment bases. You gain a lot of recruitment slots. It's very decent. As you can see here, you always have decent recruit slots. So even if you're in requiring some units, there's no issue whatsoever with the Skaven. So yeah, if you never played Skaven, give it a try to Tretch. He's really nice, and it's quite one of the, for me, one of the lords that you would not believe how awesome he is, actually. So go forth while Tretch scurries away from you. Yes, yes.